It's that time of year of holiday cheer, holiday spirit, and giving. But in the NFL, it doesn't seem to play any role whatsoever. It's more of a time of year where you talk about which coaches won't be here next season. Jason Horowitz, CBSSports.com's NFL columnist Clark Judge. Glad to be with you on the End Zone, presented by Nuvi Phone, the navigational phone by Garmin. And Clark, we talk about this every year, and nobody likes to talk about which coaches are going to lose their job or anybody losing their job, but it's something that fans talk about, owners talk about, the media talks about. If we go under the assumption that Jim Zorn is done in Washington, which I think is a fair assumption, which coach do you think you can say right here is guaranteed not to be back with his team next season?
I don't know if I can say guarantee, but I think John Fox is real close in Carolina. You know, John's got one more year left on his contract, and there's been absolutely no discussion about an extension. And that's too bad, because John's done a lot for this ball club. But this would be the time when you talk about an extension for John Fox. The fact that there hasn't been indicates that there probably is some displeasure with what's going on there. And the fact that you also have another coach, and a well-known coach, and a Super Bowl coach sitting there in North Carolina leads to all sorts of speculation. They could end that speculation by giving him an extension. It hasn't happened. I think John Fox is really on the hot seat.
Yeah, he's on the hot seat, and not the hottest discussion, of course, around the NFL, because let's be honest, Carolina isn't necessarily relevant compared to Dallas. That's the hottest discussion when it comes to coach, because Wade Phillips has done everything except win in December and except win in the playoffs in Dallas. If they don't make the playoffs, is it a guarantee that he is done?
Absolutely.
Let me take it a step further. If they don't win a playoff game for the first time since '96, is it he gone?
Gone. I mean, he's got to win at least a playoff game, and maybe he has to go deep into the playoffs. But you look at what's going on now. They had a chance last week to stop the bleeding at home against San Diego. They lost. Now more questions about December. How come these guys can't close the season? With Wade Phillips, it hasn't happened. Under Tony Romo, it hasn't happened. So you figure the game they're going to win is last week. Sort of a must-win game. Now you go to New Orleans without DeMarcus Ware. How are they going to win there? Then to Washington. And again, it's going to be the Super Bowl for the Redskins. The Redskins should have beaten them 3 weeks ago. How are they going to win there? And then you finish against Philadelphia. Yeah, I think Wade Phillips is in real trouble.
What about Lovie Smith in Chicago? They have not made the playoffs, and they are eliminated for this season. They have not made the playoffs since the 2006 Super Bowl season.
Right. Well, there are a lot of people in Chicago who want to see Lovie Smith gone. It's not going to happen. I'll tell you why. It's too expensive, because he's got 2 more years left on his contract, $11 million. I don't see the McCaskies buying him out at $11 million and then paying, let's say, $40 million over 5 years, which is probably the going freight for a new head coach. You're going to pay $50 million next year? I don't think that's going to happen. I think Lovie Smith will make it because it's simply too expensive to buy him out.
And that's an interesting story in Chicago. They bring in Jay Cutler. You have all the expectations. We're going to go to the playoffs. Maybe Jay Cutler can
Don't get me started on Jay Cutler.
I know. You know, Lovie Smith is a defensive coach. The defense has been worse, and worse 2007, 2008, and 2009. That's why you look at this and say, maybe this is the biggest concern, at least in my mind.
Yeah, no, I've got some real issues with what Chicago did, but, you know, Lovie Smith's got a quarterback they think is a franchise quarterback. I don't think he is. He hasn't won any place he's been, and that includes college. And now you got Ron Turner, who's on the hot seat. I don't think Ron Turner's coming back as the offensive coordinator. And honestly, I've got some sympathy for him, because in Chicago, you run the ball to win. You play defense to win. And people say, well, the defense isn't very good because of Brian Urlacher. Injuries happen.
It wasn't good with Brian Urlacher last year.
But injuries happen. And also, when you're turning it over 3 and out on offense, the defense is on the field longer, it looks worse.
And Brian Urlacher said it himself last week on Joe Buck Live on HBO. We weren't very good with me on the field last year either. I want to ask you about Houston, because the Texans are in their best, their most successful stretch in franchise history, yet they still have yet to have a winning season, and unless they win out, they will not have a winning season this season. Is Gary Kubiak done?
Yeah, I don't think he's done, but I think he's very close. I think he's really got to finish here with a flourish, and that means winning everything on out. I mean, Bob McNair said a couple of weeks ago, I want a winning team. Well, if they have another loss, they're not a winning team again, and that'll be the legacy of Gary Kubiak. He didn't win in Houston. I think he's had a fair shot there. And, you know, last week also, they go into the Jacksonville game with the owner saying, this is a must-win game. Well, guess what? They lost, all right? So I think Kubiak really has to finish for the flourish, and I'm even not sure then whether it happens. They got to make the playoffs, and I don't see them making the playoffs.
It's going to be really tough with a 9-7. And then you look at the coaches in their first year, all the guys in their first year. Is there one, maybe two, that it could be one and done?
Well, I think Raheem Morris in Tampa Bay is in real trouble. Now, he may make it, but Raheem Morris, at least according to one of his players, said a little bit bored with the head coaching job job. Well, I tell you what, I'm a little bit bored watching his team play. And if I'm the owner, I don't want to hear that. I think you hear some things come out of Tampa that the ownership's not real taken with the way he's handled the club. He's a little bit embarrassed the way he's handled the club. Yeah, I think he's on the hot seat. People want to talk about Mangini, but I think Eric's coming back next year. And listen, they've shown some life lately, and I think it really does depend on who comes in there as a GM.
And you talked about the money issues with Chicago. Cleveland's already paying the old GM. They're paying the old head coach. They can't afford to pay another head coach to not be there for another 3 seasons. More on the End Zone. Read Clark's articles about the coaches on the hot seat, or his article about the coaches on the hot seat right here on CBSSports.com. And, of course, the End Zone is brought to you by Nuvie Phone, navigational phone from Garmin, GPS navigation, preloaded maps, and everything you'd expect with a phone from AT&T service. For Clark Judge, I'm Jason Horowitz. Take care, folks.